here's a recap of today's developments in Ukraine. President Zelinkski has called on the UN Security Council to bring Russia to account following the release of shocking images from the town of Bucha. Moscow has today denied the atrocity allegations and called them a monstrous forgery. Meanwhile, the EU is proposing new sanctions against Moscow. So there's been a lot of news to digest today out of New York, Moscow and Ukraine. For some analysis, I'm joined by Arise News' Editorial Director, Nick Jennings. Always good to see you, Nick. You've been across those developments in the UN and elsewhere around Ukraine. How much has Russia, do you think, been stung by the widespread, very public outrage over its actions in Bucha?
Well, I don't think it's just the outrage of the world community that was very evident at that meeting there, the emergency meeting of the Security Council. And of course, the speech from President Zelinkski, absolutely emotional and appealing for more help. I think what really struck me, Charles, and it wasn't just Zelinkski, because one or two of the other members also spoke about this. It's about almost the sort of incompetence or inability of the United Nations to really get a grip on this. Now, the primary role of the United Nations when it was set up more than 70 years ago was for the maintenance of peace and security in the world, to stop World War III after the horrors of World War II. And Dag Hammarskjöld, the third security general of the United Nations, who died in mysterious circumstances in Zambia, by the way, he put it very aptly when he said that the UN was not created to lead mankind to heaven, but to save humanity from hell. And many people think right now that that is what Ukraine is going through, a form of hell created by this Russian invasion, incursion, military operation, whatever you want to call it. And Zelinkski went on much stronger to say that almost that the UN is now not fit for purpose. The whole world can see it, he said. The UN is not doing enough. It's not doing its job. He said, act now, shut the guns down. Act now, or basically shut down, because the UN isn't doing its job. He said, basically, what you're seeing is the death of the UN Charter. Very, very strong stuff, Charles.
Well, absolutely, Nick, but the fact remains that there was that session at the UN Security Council, and in fact, I'm sure President Zelinkski would be happy to note that a lot of what took place there appeared to be loaded against Russia. Is that how you saw it?
Well, it was how I think most right-minded people will see it, but I think many people will also see that Russia's defense, you then get into this mysterious world of, fixed narratives or fake news, or people begin to lose sight of where the real truth lies. And it's very complicated, particularly if you're talking about how you apply some kind of sanction, not just sanctions, Charles, but some kind of making people pay for their crimes, for their war crimes, because I think it's going to be very, very difficult, despite the investigation that will start soon. The European Union said it's going to be sending inspectors as soon as possible. But how they're going to enforce it, how they're going to make this accountability work and hold those people responsible and bring them to justice, I think that is a very, very tough ask.
Well, yes, you have a very important point that you're making there. Russia, of course, as you said, continuing to deny that it was responsible for those killings. In the face of that blanket denial, how important is this new satellite evidence that's emerged, Nick? I mean, how conclusive do you think it is?
It's open to interpretation, Charles. I mean, I've looked at that video as anyone else has done on television screens. I don't think it's completely compelling evidence that what you see there on the ground is definitely bodies or when they were first discovered. I mean, I think this whole critical timeline is a very important issue, and I don't know how they're going to prove it. You saw the Russian representative there, saying that if those bodies had been left out for 3 or 4 weeks or however long it is when the Russians first went into Bucha, that they wouldn't be in a very good state at all. But what he didn't mention is that there had been snow on the ground during that intervening period. It's very hard to get to the truth, Charles. The truth these days seems to be very open to interpretation and to whatever sort of propaganda you want to put out.
Absolutely, Nick. So, I mean, you've got a lot of experience in these matters. What happens after this grim discovery in Bucha? I know you touched on it briefly, but is it likely to change anything inside or outside Ukraine, given the near impotence of the UN that you talked about?
Well, that's a very good question. I think the least the UN can do is go in and absolutely say to the Russians, this has got to stop right now. We need to come in and sort out this humanitarian crisis. And let's face it, Charles, it's not just the people in Ukraine are suffering. We saw many of the other representatives, particularly those from Africa, talking about the wider implications for the world, whether it's the food crisis, whether it's the cost of fuel, etc., how this is all affecting the world. What happens next remains to be seen, obviously, whether the Russians are going to carry on with their aggressive intent towards parts of the south and east of Ukraine, or whether there is going to be a halt in the fighting, some kind of ceasefire so that the humanitarian aid people can get in and sort it out. But looking further down, when we're talking about accountability, I can't imagine that this is going to be something that's resolved in the next year, 5 years. I'm talking about accountability and bringing people to trial in the next 5-10 years. It's going to take a very long time to go through the courts to provide the evidence. And at the end of the day, I don't think any Russians are going to be brought to court. We've seen before when they shot down the Malaysian airliner. Even now, 12 years down the road, no Russians have been brought to justice in the International Criminal Court. Incidentally, Russia doesn't recognize the validity of the International Court. Also very close to where I am right now, just 10 miles away, the Russians used Novichok to try and kill a former spy. No one's been brought to justice for that, Charles. So actually getting accountability, apart from ending this war and getting to the bottom of these war crimes and who committed them and whether they will be brought to justice, I think these are big unknown questions.
Very salient points there. Nick, thanks very much indeed. Arise Editorial Director Nick Jennings talking to me there.